I've got my grinder and my tape measure ready. I'm going to cut a hole where this fuel cell sits, the size of this wedge shape. It's going to be in the bottom of this box. That way the fuel cell can sit down, what's that, 2 inches more down into the box. And the fuel line will be running out of the bottom of the box, probably through this hole right here, following this pipe back down to the fuel pump. That's what we're working on today. In the bottom of the box, I've got the hole laid out. We're going to cut that out. That's where the fuel cell wedge is going to fall in. Once we get that cut out, we'll drill 4 holes, mount the tank down, then we can start running some lines. Okay, the hole has been cut. Let's see if the tank fits in. Looks good to me. All right, let's bolt her down. Up next, I'll take these 2 straps, drill 4 holes, put 4 bolts in, and this tank is going to be strapped down. Okay, the hole has been cut. The bolt holes have been drilled. I even painted to prevent some rust on the rusty buggy. As soon as I find 4 bolts, 4 nuts, and 4 washers, we'll mount that tank in the hole. Here's a collection of nuts and bolts and washers to bolt down the fuel cell. I'll be using a big flat washer and a small on the bottom with a lock nut. Okay, the bolts that hold the tank have been tightened up. It's not going anywhere. Same thing for this side. Now we'll take this fuel line and hook it up and run it back to the fuel pump. Maybe even throw in a filter. Okay, the fuel line shoots back and it's just kind of hanging out. It's not hooked up on the fuel pump yet. And I've just put in the vent, this vent hose. It goes up, it comes around, and it's going to drop down in that hole down there. And on this end, I'm going to put this old PCV valve, put that in there, underneath the tank. That's what I'm doing right this second. And we got a lock washer and a nut for the other side. That strap is done and it is tight. I'll even show you the back side. See the back side? Now on back to the fuel pump. Okay, I've got my fuel line and I want to put in a fuel filter right about here. So I've got this was a leg to that parts washer. I'm going to cut it off about right here and make a bracket that's going to hold this fuel filter. That way this will match that, we'll clear coat it. Should look good. We'll see. Okay, I've got this bracket cut, and I think back here I'm going to have it share this same bolt to make it stronger. We'll put maybe 2 screws in through the top. Now I've got to cut a little area for the fuel filter to go. Mark it, cut it, and I may bend this out a little bit for the fuel line to come in. That's what it's looking like. It's now time to clear coat the custom fuel filter bracket. Good enough. Now if you're wondering how to cut that braided line, you take a hose clamp, mark your spot, get your grinder with a cutoff wheel. Now I've got this custom clear coated fuel filter bracket. It goes on about there and the fuel filter mounts right below it. And here's the fuel filter all mounted in place. It's ready to go. If we come on back, the fuel line, I adapted it down to Volkswagen size. It is hooked to the fuel pump. This system is literally ready for gas. If we shine down to the floor, I got this gauge cluster yesterday from the flea market, $4. And I probably won't use any of the gauges, but down here in the corner, there is a key switch. And this buggy, I've been hunting a key switch for a while now. I'm really excited about that. Now I want to start the electrical. There's also a little fuse panel. We might mount this in the parts washer box. So now here is the key switch removed from that junk. There's the fuse box. I've got my dash panel here. I'm thinking maybe somewhere in this area. I might sit in the buggy and see what feels the best, and I've got a battery box ready to go into the parts washer trunk. Parts washer box, the trunk, I've got this fuse panel. I think I'm gonna mount it on this wall, right between the tank and the battery, and then I'll make some kind of protection wall to keep something from hitting it. This fuse panel's gonna work. The 3 holes, they hold this little guy up, and on the back, I got these little insulating washers I'm gonna put on. And it just screws right into place. 3 screws, 6 little washers. I'll be right back. Okay, the heart of the electrical system is now in place. I might mount the battery box, start running some wires. So I just washed up the battery box. It looks just like brand new. If we move it out of the way, this is the panel cover, panel protector that I built up. And this piece of metal here, that's where we cut the hole for the sump on the fuel cell. I'm thinking right there. Just put screws in this one side. Let the fuel cell hold that other side. You like? Now while you were not looking, I stuck a seat belt in there. That holds the battery box in. Keep it from flopping around while you're riding. Just like that. And just like that. Old seatbelt, I wasn't going to use it for anything else anyway. Comes in handy. Now I know some of you had asked me, what does that horn sound like? It sounds kind of like this. That's kind of what it sounds like. Way back in episode number 1, I mentioned maybe making a cup holder here, or a can or bottled water holder. And I think we're going to try that right about now. Cup holder update. It's a good tight fit for the can. About that deep. And I don't want to make it closed in, because if you go mud bogging, that'll be holding a bunch of mud. I want to make it where you can wash it out easy. This is the second part of the cup holder bracket, and it's also going to be a fuel line holder. This hole here holds up the fuel line. It bolts into these existing holes. I'm going to put it on. I'll show you what it looks like once I get it on. Now the bracket is fully in place, bolted down. The fuel line is bolted on. The can sits down into the holder. The big can would sit in the holder. And now the small can might be a little bit... It could almost get lost. Almost. Who uses small cans anyways? Tire update. These tires were too big for my buggy. I got them for $50 off Craigslist. Slapped them right back on Craigslist and got 60 out of them. That paid for my gas to go buy them in the first place. Here it is, paint on wheel time. I've got it sanded. Put a little paint thinner on there. I'm going to spray a little bit of paint on it. Well, it's about time.
That was a sweat. Probably not, because you've been walking.
Paint the inside of the wheel that metallic blue. Try not to run out of white paint. Shame the inside's got to be prettier than the outside. It is now time to put the tire on the wheel. Let's get this over with. And so now the key switch is in place. And the rest of this video I think I'm going to dedicate to getting brakes on the buggy. Okay, I've got the front brake drum off. I'm trying to see if the wheel cylinders are the same. They look the same to me. I think I'll go for it. Little spring to the front. Big spring to the back. Now around back, this is what we're trying to change. I gotta take the bleeder valve out and the brake hose off. Old versus new. I guess. So the bolt that holds the wheel cylinder in is a 13 millimeter. This end of the brake hose is a 14 millimeter. That end is a 17 millimeter. The bleeder valve is a 7 millimeter. It's a variety of wrenches to get that little guy out. What we do now is get our springs back on, get the drum back on. Now we gotta pin the speedometer cable in place. Like that. She's done. I'll put the turn wheel back on, do the other side, and then we'll bleed the brakes. Brake check time.